It was the 21st of January 2009, and I got a message on my cell phone to say, it's over, the mine's closing, we're out of here. We lived in a little town called Hopetown. Anybody been to Hopetown? Down south. Total population, any guesses?
Not many now.
300. We were halfway through building a house, and in fact there's a picture of the house that we were busy building, and that's where it was on the 21st of January 2009. So when I got this message to say that the mine was closing and there was no more opportunities in town, I got a little bit of a shock, because this house that we were halfway through building still needed to be paid for. And we were new in town. We'd only been in Australia for 18 months. We've got 3 little children. And there was just no ways that we could actually pay for this house. And about a couple of hours later, there was a knock on the door, and it was a reporter from the Australian newspaper. And he said, "Are you the Hutchisons?" I said, "Yes, we are." "Is that your house on the hill that's half built?" So I said, "Yes." "Were you uprooted from your home in South Africa and brought your family here to start a new future, to live here for 25 years? Did the company promise you things?" I said, "Yes, they did." They said, "We'd like to take your photograph and put it on the front of the Australian, but we'd like you and your 3 kids in front of the house so that we can show everybody how badly done by you have been." My husband said, "Yes, let's go do it." I said, "Not a chance." I said, "We're not victims. And this is not a personal thing. The company didn't decide, oh, well, you've come all the way across half the world. We'll just mess up your life for you. Let's do that right now." They don't do things like that. It's just a business decision. So in that moment, I knew that our attitude towards what was happening to us was critical. In fact, on my desk, I was busy working through this book, Think and Grow Rich. How many of you have read this book? Yeah? And on one of the pages it said, out of 500 of the world's most successful people, every single one of them said that their greatest success came one step after accepting defeat. Trickster has a great sense of irony and cunning. It trips one when success is almost within reach. So I looked at this house and I thought, this feels like a disaster, this feels like failure. It's time to get excited. And that's exactly what we did. So what I thought I'd share with you today is 3 things about attitude, because I don't know that anything that I'm going to share with you is actually new, quite honestly. Normally, a talk like this only attracts those who know that attitude is a good thing to have, a good attitude to have. It normally keeps the bad attitude people away, so I'm not here to teach you anything. But really to make you remember what you do know. And a little bit later, I'll be talking about the knowing-doing gap. And that is whether we're actually applying what we know into what we're actually doing. There's the house on the 21st of January. And what actually happened beyond that was I wrote a goal card. And if you look on the back of my business card, there are a couple of over there, there's place to write your goal. And I wrote out a goal card and I said, I'm so happy and grateful now that we have $240,000, because that's what we needed to finish this property. I had no idea where we were going to get it from. I had no idea how we were going to get it. The banks had actually said, no, sorry, that loan we promised you is no longer valid because of what's happening. And knowing that the house dropped halved in value, it wasn't something I could phone my friends and say, do you want to invest in a great investment in this little town? Minus 50% the minute you put your money down. So I just wrote out my goal card and I said, I'm so happy and grateful that we have $240,000. The company was not going to pay out anybody who'd bought property in the area, but eventually after discussion, they actually agreed to help us and buy the property from us at exactly what we paid for it. Now, do you think that if we'd stood on the front of the Australian newspaper and said all the bad things that we could possibly say about the company, do you think they ever would have come and helped us? I don't think so. And funny enough, 4 years later, my husband was actually back at that same company. Again, I think if we'd really run them down, he probably would never have been allowed to set foot on their property ever again. So remember that. Attitude is really, really key. So the question I have for you this morning is, What do you think the primary cause of your results actually is? Any guesses? Hard work, yeah. What else? Attitude. Exactly. Thank you. So attitude is the main reason why we get anything. Because attitude is made up of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. So that hard work is part of our actions. But if we haven't adjusted the thoughts, if we haven't decided what attitude we want to have from the beginning, nothing is going to make a difference at all. So the first point that I'd like to make is every day is Tuesday. We can choose our attitude. We can either look at our customers like this, or we can choose the way that we'd like to have them react to us. We'd like to have them experience us. I was at Harvey Norman Osborne Park in the clearance section there, and I took my box to the till, and Ernie said to me, "Ma'am, can I ask you what you'd like this vacuum cleaner for?" I said, "Oh, it's for an investment apartment we've just purchased." He said, "What's the floor surface?" I said, "It's carpet." He said, "But ma'am, don't you want something more powerful to clean those carpets if you're going to be investing, if you're going to be renting it out for a while?" He said, "Here's one that's double as powerful, but it's only $50 more." I said, "You've got a good point, Ernie, thank you." He said, "Just hold on, I'll get it for you." I paid, and he said, "Would you like me to carry it out to your car, love?" I said, "Thank you, Ernie, that would be great." How many times do we have that experience when we go shopping? I can't remember the last time somebody offered to carry something that I was perfectly capable of carrying myself, actually, out to my car. But it made a difference. Will I go back there again? Of course. Will I tell people about it? Absolutely. But you know as well as I do that your customers will probably tell the bad experience when they've had this sort of look at them more than they will the good experience. So see if you can only give your customers really great stories to share. I like to share when I have great experience. I put a little hashtag A+ Attitude Award on my Facebook, because I believe if we can share the great attitudes we experience from business, I think that's going to encourage so much more, isn't it? And that's what I'd love to see, is more of that. Isn't that interesting? A bad attitude is just like a flat tire, and we can change it. So the question that I'd like to ask you is, if we could we're going to break for 30 seconds. Turn to the person next to you and answer this question. What attitude do you need to have towards your customers? Go. 30 seconds starts now. All right. So we've spoken about the fact that every day is Tuesday, we can choose our attitude. The next point is the knowing-doing gap. Because I know every one of you is nodding going, "Yeah, I knew that. What she's just said, I knew that already. I've heard that before. I tell other people that." How many of you have heard something and go, "Yeah, that's a good point. I know that." But the question is, are you actually doing it? So that's the biggest human dilemma, I believe, is the gap between what we know and what we do. I was discussing this with my 12-year-old daughter in the car yesterday, and she said, "Mum, is your presentation ready?" I said, "Yes." Like, "Have you done your homework, Mum?" I said, "Yes." She said, "What are you talking about?" So I said, one of the topics is knowing-doing gap. She said, "Yeah, Mum, you and I know that we can choose our attitude and choose our response." But she said, sometimes when you're angry, it's just hard to let go of that. You just sometimes don't want to let go of that, even though you know you can choose it. Sometimes I just want to be angry. And I thought, yeah, that's so true. So when a customer comes in, or when we have an interaction with our family member, or something goes wrong, we know that we can choose how to respond, but we don't always do that. What are you doing that you could be doing more of? Or what do you know that you could be doing? We'll pause for a minute just to cover that shortly. So nothing can stop the man or woman with the right mental attitude from achieving his goal. And nothing can help someone with the wrong one. Isn't that so true? Isn't that so true? So let's break for a few seconds, 20 seconds, and turn to the person next to you and say, this is what I know I could be doing, but I'm not doing, and I'm going to start doing it. All right. So we've spoken about the fact that every day is Tuesday, we can choose our attitude. And we've spoken about that knowing-doing gap. Isn't it interesting when you think, yeah, I know, and I started doing that when I first started my business, but maybe I've forgotten about it. So I hope that you've got some things that you can go away with and think, I can implement that today. The next question is, what do you really, really want? Because the right attitude for you is determined by what you actually want. If you want more business, it needs to be a more customer-facing, a more customer-friendly attitude. If you want better relationships, it needs to be a better attitude towards your partner. If you want better relationships with your kids, well, that takes very interesting attitudes. I have 17, 14, and 12. So when I look at attitude some days, I think, phew, attitude. Everybody's got attitude. But it's really about which attitude is going to serve you. But I like to start at the very beginning, and that's really, what do you really, really want? And I've got a model that I work with clients in terms of how to put this all in place. And it starts with the fact that it starts with our thoughts, and our thoughts end up giving us our results. How many of you have read The Secret or heard of The Secret? So some of the biggest critics of The Secret is the notion that you can just sit and imagine, and I'll say, I'm just going to imagine my future, I'm going to imagine loss of customers, I'm going to imagine my great bank account, and it doesn't appear. What's with that? The Secret says if I imagine it and I think about it, it's going to come. The problem is there's a bit of a gap in the middle, isn't there, between our thoughts and getting the results. So that's what I really like to tackle. We need to be very clear on the thoughts and what we really want, and we need to be clear on the results. But there's quite a bit of work in the middle that needs to happen. So that bit in the middle, I've made a model for, and if you read it very carefully, I'm going to give a prize to the first person who picks up something amiss with the slide.
Gratitude.
There we go, thank you. So it starts with a decision. So I call this my ABC model because you'll see it starts act, connect, or act, believe, connect, decide. But we actually need to start with a D. We need to start with a decision. You need to decide exactly what you want at every situation, every possible instance. And this is probably the most challenging, because when you've had a great success, suddenly you think, now what do I really want? If I know that's possible, what do I want? If you've had a knock and you've been kind of disappointed, or you've had a breakup in a relationship, or you've lost business, or you've lost money, or you've lost, something's gone wrong, then we tend to think, I don't know what I want. Just everything that I thought I was going to get is now not going to happen. And the tendency then is not to set goals and just go, you know what, it's pointless setting goals. It's pointless doing this. I'm just going to plod along because all my hopes and dreams have been dashed. Both of those times are exactly the right time for you to say, this is what I want, and this is what I'm going to go for. The second part of the process is to connect with yourself. I believe that attitude towards others is important, but the most important is actually the attitude towards yourself. Are you giving yourself the break that you need, or are you judging? Are you shoulding all over yourself? It's so easy to say, I should be doing this, I should be doing more exercise, I should be eating better, I should be visiting my clients more often, I should be making more phone calls. I should. Should doesn't inspire anybody. If somebody tells me I should do it, by the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning, because I'm still learning West Australian 101, sometimes if I get excited, I say, you must do this, or you should do this. But it's really just a suggestion. But if somebody says, you should do something, it doesn't really make you feel like doing it. So why are you saying that to yourself? Why are you insisting that you try and force that through? So part of the connection is connecting with yourself, connecting with spirit, connecting with others in networking groups like this that can actually help you get where you want to get. That's also important. The B stands for believe and beliefs. It's our paradigms, which is a set of beliefs or a set of thoughts that we've been having all through our life, that determines what we think is possible. I got a phone call from a friend of mine in Oklahoma. I'd met her when I was working with Bob Proctor in Toronto in 2012. And she said to me, you made the biggest difference on my life compared to anybody. And I said, really? She said, yes, when I met you, she had a physical therapy practice with 13 practitioners and a very good turnover. And she said, when I met you, I wanted to make a movie. But nobody else believed that I could make a movie. But you believed I could make a movie, and you asked me a whole lot of questions that made the difference. 18 months later, she had made the movie. And it's called Skid, and it's coming on it'll be going to the film festival in about 3 weeks' time, I think. So from not having a movie to suddenly having made a movie, because she made a decision, and because she connected with herself and with somebody who could actually believe in her and work with her. And she said to me, I cannot wait to see what happens after working with you for a year. After just that one conversation, what difference it made, I can't wait to see. So that connection with yourself and changing some of the beliefs that you have about yourself is really, really important. A stands for action. So attitude starts with A, action starts with A. There's good reason why they both start with A. We could do all of this. We can believe, we can change our thoughts, we can change our beliefs, we can connect with people. But if we don't take the action, what's going to happen? Absolutely nothing. So that action is really, really important. And I believe all of this without being grateful or without actually reviewing what you have accomplished and what you're grateful for is probably pointless. So it's really important to review it as well. So the next question that I have for you is to turn to the person next to you and ask, what do you want to be, do, or have in 3 years' time? I'll be back in 30 seconds. So far we've spoken about every day is Tuesday, the fact that you can choose your attitude at any point. We've spoken about that knowing-doing gap. And I've spoken about some ways that you can actually change, think about what you really want. You've also had a little bit of thought about what you'd really, really be wanting to do. Because I've found sometimes your attitude can be affected by the fact that you may not be doing exactly what you want to be doing. So no matter how hard you try to adjust your attitude, if it's not what you really like, that attitude can come across to customers without you realizing it. Even though you think you can pump yourself up and you can motivate yourself. I love a little story that's told by a man called Zig Ziglar, who comes from Texas. And he said, you might have heard of him. He said somebody came up to him after a seminar. He did inspirational, motivational workshops. And somebody came up and said, so Zig, I don't think motivation lasts, in his Texan drawl. And he said, no, you're right. It doesn't last. And neither does bathing. and that's why we recommend it daily. So it's all very well to come to something like this and all be inspired, and this is great. But what are you going to do tomorrow and the next day and the next day to keep inspired and keep motivated? That's the real key determine. And I find when you're really excited about what you do and you're starting to work on some of those desires and dreams that you've had for a while, whether it's in your existing business or in something else, like Vicky that I spoke to, from physical therapy to movie making, it's about as far apart as you could possibly get. Think about what you'd really, really love to do. So I trust that I've given you enough to think about for this morning. We're on a tight timeline, and I've hoped to share with you a couple of inspiring thoughts. The next time you think, it's over, I'm out of here, think how important attitude is in that moment. Thank you.